Welcome to Kara's Cures, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. And today, on a Monday, we can get a little angry with Mondays, but we're learning how to make friends with anger, actually make it work for you in a healthier way. Rini Jane and Ed Krasnick are the hosts of the Dear Anger podcast. And Rini's also the founder of GoZen, one of the world's most recognized programs to build resilience in kids and teens. So welcome to both of you.
Nice to see you, Kara.
Thank you, Kara.
So I was listening, and I think you have something radical to say. Essentially, you say anger isn't bad. It could actually even be good.
Can you imagine this thing that we've been told since childhood is shameful and horrible and needs to go away, and get rid of it can actually be used to our advantage? We think we're getting anger wrong, right, Ed?
Yes, I'm always getting anger wrong. I'm angry now.
So, I listened to the podcast, and I think it started out, one of the callers I heard, a mom called in, and she said she just feels so ashamed that she's always getting angry at her kids, and she's frustrated, they're late. I mean, I think every mom can relate to this, that you're saying you're not going to lose it, but then the pressure builds, and we lose it, and we get angry. What do you say to a situation like that, Rini?
Yeah, I think that we are talking about not the feeling of anger that we have inside, that's part of our humanity. We're talking about our relationship with it. We're talking about our reaction to it. And who, as a mom, I'm a mom myself. I have a 7 and 8-year-old. I got him ready for school this morning. Who hasn't been in that situation where we're not happy with the way that we're showing up, with the way that we're reacting to anger? But what we always have been doing is basically shutting it down. We've learned since we were kids, if you're yelling or you're screaming or you're upset or you're tantruming, that is not the way we want to show up in the world. We want to show up composed and calm, and that's the okay feeling. But really what we're doing is, in trying to get rid of it, we are not working through it. We're not processing it. So all of those big reactions are basically unprocessed anger. So we need to befriend it. We need to listen to it. What is anger trying to say to us should be the first question.
Well, you speak of kids, and I'll have you both comment on this, but that is something, I mean, I've said it 100 times to my kids. That's not okay. You have a timeout, like we have to take a timeout. And I think that's a natural thing. That's not okay to scream, or it's not okay to hit. You're not actually saying that hitting is okay, just that anger is
Oh my
okay.
Goodness, no.
So
Yes.
how would you treat anger differently than the way we're all doing it?
Yeah. So, those boundaries. So this isn't about permissiveness. Kids can do whatever they want. They can hit, they can scream. This is not about that. I'm a huge proponent of having boundaries, compassionate boundaries, right? So yeah, I won't let you hit. I won't let you scream. I won't let you, kick your brother for the 100th time. That happens in my house. But what I will let you do is be angry, is feel. So how would you change that in your house? That's the first step. Yeah. These things are okay, right? And these things are not okay. So the behaviors that we're seeing are not okay. But is it okay to feel really angry? Yeah, because your anger is telling you something. Your anger is telling you that something important to you is being violated. And that's what we want kids to understand. Your anger is speaking to you. But if we shut down the feeling in the moment or outside the moment, how are they ever going to listen to its message? So how do we do it differently in our homes when those things are happening? Well, in the moment is hard, right? When you're in the moment, sometimes you're just trying to get through the storm. A lot of the work is done in breaking down what happened outside of the moment.
So Ed, I know by trade you're also a comedian, so humor could be effective. But if you're used to if you're someone who, I guess there's two types of people. You get angry and you shut down, or you get angry and you get loud. Either way, is pausing the first step?
Well, it's, pausing and making space is definitely one thing. But another thing is using humor and preparing for these situations by practicing them. And that sounds strange, but you can actually do role play, especially if your kids are little or any age. You can take turns. This is mom. What does mommy look like when she's angry? What do you look like when you're angry? And you can take turns and actually be a little bit silly with it. And the kids will love it, but it gets across a point that we can prepare for our anger. We can prepare for our feelings. We can practice mental health. And that's what this is. It's a practice. It's a skill, right? And so you wouldn't play basketball with the Celtics and not practice,
Well, Rini,
or they don't practice enough.
and Rini, we were all told, I think, a different kind of practice that you should not get angry at all.
Let me ask you this, for anyone who's watching out there, how many times has telling your kids to take a deep breath or relax in the moment worked? Probably a big goose egg, right?
Well,
It doesn't work.
That's what we're supposed to do, but what are you supposed to do instead?
What are you supposed to do instead? So, what Ed was talking about, I'll just give you a concrete example. So, my kids have a really hard time when we go to the bookstore because bookstores have become more than bookstores. They carry toys and they carry Pokemon cards and lots of other stuff, right? Not just books. So, I'm always saying to them, when we go into the bookstore, we're going to get 2 books, and that's it. We're not getting any other things. But inevitably, we get into the bookstore and there is whining and there's, upset and, someone ends up walking out. It's usually me. So I said to them the other day, you guys, we're going to go to the bookstore because we need some books, but we need to practice first. So we literally set up a bookstore in our house. It's just for fun. My kids, again, are 7 and 8 years old. So this worked with them. You have to adjust for age. And we practiced. I said, let's pretend to go in. The first time, I want you guys to do what you always do, which is basically to melt down. They had so much fun with that. They got in the pretend bookstore. And then I said, the next time we do this, the role play, I want you guys to try a different reaction because you have a choice. A lot of times kids and adults feel like my reaction, I can't help. I have no choice. Yelling, I can't help. Screaming, I can't help. Punishing, I can't help. But once you start to practice, you see that when the anger comes up inside of you, you actually can choose a different reaction. So that role play really helped us.
So that's great to teach kids. What about adults? What about those of us who, there was a mom who called in and she was so ashamed because she said, I'm making a bigger scene yelling at my kids all the time than my kids are really making. And as adults, we've already sort of learned our reactions. So what do adults do to get a handle on their anger, either at home or at work?
Yeah, first understand that you're not alone. I feel like there is so much shame wrapped around anger, and we don't need to be shameful or self-critical with ourselves. This is the way we grew up. Most of us were told to put our anger away, and come into the world calm. We had no idea that anger could be something that's okay and that's useful. So step 1, be kind to yourself. Step 2, choose a different reaction before it actually happens. How do you want to show up in the world? A lot of times, if I've screamed at my kids and it's definitely happened, and all of a sudden I hear my mom's voice coming out of me, or I'm having one of those out of body experiences. Oh my goodness, I never thought I would be this parent that was raising my voice and doing these things. So I think to myself, what is the best version of myself? What's the highest version of myself? And how should I be able to show up for my kids? So set the intention. I want to be able to coach them through this, right? Through their experience. I don't want to come in and put the smack down on. And then once you have made a choice of how you want to show up, honestly, it is a matter of practice. So if you choose not to yell, you're going to show up calm. Well, then what's the practice so that you can walk away? What do you have to do to put a space between the strong, passionate feelings of anger and the reaction that you're having? You just need to make that choice.
So sometimes it might just be going into the bathroom and taking a breath before you deal with anyone. But Ed, you actually, in this podcast, Dear Anger, you're really trying to let people know that anger isn't bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It's an emotion like every other one. And there's homework. And one of the things you guys suggest doing is we're supposed to write a letter to our anger, Dear Anger, and let anger tell you why it shows up and how it shows up. Talk a little bit about that, Ed.
Well, the thing is, Karen, nobody does this perfectly. This is the thing. When it comes to mental health, we're all children. We're all learning together. No one does it perfectly. So the relationship to your anger, even if you just ask the question, what's going on with me right now? And let that be the pause. Just question yourself. What am I feeling right now? What's happening with me? And take a little space for that. That would be huge. That would be enormous. And it would change the way that you relate to your anger. But writing to it, actually getting to know it and being surprised at what's underneath it. Because like Rini always says, it's a gateway emotion. It sits on top of other feelings. So there's a lot going on underneath. And that's what we want to relate to. But you can do it by simply taking a pause, asking a question, self-questioning, and also with your kids, how many times do your kids get mad? And how many times do you say to them, boy, you look really mad right now, rather than trying to shut it down?
Right. That is, I
So,
think, our usual thing, especially if it's kids and it's in public. You might just, I got to make this stop. But so, Rini, you actually teach a whole bunch. I've seen some stuff for teens as well. Teens tend to be pretty angry. That's what they are, I think. But there's right now it seems like the world is angry too, right? We're just going through a moment where there's a lot of anger. So, how are you teaching these skills of resilience, grit, and well-being?
Yeah, the first thing is to de-shame, de-shame, de-shame. If you're angry, if you're feeling anxious, this is an absolutely natural response to what's going on in the world. Now, not only is there a pandemic, there's a pandemic of big feelings. There's a pandemic of loneliness. There's a pandemic of mental health issues. That's what we're seeing at GoZen. So the first thing is to say to kids, there's no shame around this. If you are feeling angry, it's sending you a message. And that communication to our kids, it can be done at any age. If they're teens, if they're tweens, you can talk to a 5-year-old about that.
So you say it's a gateway emotion. What does that mean?
That means that think of an iceberg. It is what you see on top and what is lying beneath. It's just the tip of the iceberg. You're seeing the behavior of shutting down, of yelling, of acting out. But what's underneath are the really primary emotions: fear, sadness, negativity, jealousy, guilt. These are the things that are underneath. So when our kids are acting out, they're behaving in ways that we don't love, that's communication. And all we're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. And we really need to dive into that chilly water and figure out what's going on underneath.
Well, and there's two different reactions, because some people, and they know who they are, if they get angry, they tend to get loud and they yell and they're really upset, and they're angry. Other people do the reverse. Maybe they've been trained so much to not show anything that they're really angry, but they turn it inward. Is there something to be learned from that, or is one or the other better or worse?
No, well, I guess if we're going to say better or worse, I do believe that, it's great to know what's going on with our kids. And so if they're manifesting it in a really loud way, at least we know. What happens with kids and with adults when we start to stockpile our feelings and pretend like they're not there is we don't process them. And so eventually we have to take the edge off in other ways. Those feelings are still there. They're just stuck inside of us, right? So we see kids that numb in different ways. These can lead to different kinds of addictions and kind of horrible things that we don't want to see with our kids. And so, I would say if there's a better or worse, it's better that we see what's going on than we don't see what's going on. But either way, it's taking a toll on us, right? And it really is time to start changing our relationship with anger. It's not going anywhere. It's part of our humanity.
Yeah, and it's a humorous podcast. Ed, I know you guys have done Dear Anxiety before, which everyone is okay talking about anxiety. But one of the reasons you've decided to do this is people kind of don't want to even talk about anger.
right. They don't want to talk about it. And the way that I've learned as a comedian is to exaggerate it, to be silly about it, and to really make light of it. Because it's something that we all feel. It's something that we all do. If it's a character, if it's something you want to do, whatever you want to do, you can do it, and you can play with your feelings. That's the thing, is it's all experimental. It's all open for play. And if your kids see you modeling this, they'll be thrilled and they'll want to join in. This is the thing. The other thing, Kara, is self-parenting, which you never hear that term. But this is a term where you have to parent yourself as you parent your kid. You can't be doing any of these things for them if you're not doing them for yourself.
So, Rini, do you find that? I know you do lots to help teens, but this podcast is actually, I would say, probably more adults are going to listen to it. Not that you couldn't listen to it with your teens. But do you find that we kind of have to teach ourselves first? Because I think a lot of people are thinking, this is my pattern. I don't know how to change it.
Oh my goodness. It is the ultimate relief when you figure out that you have control over yourself and how you show up with your kids. So if they're having the tantrum, you be the calm that you want to see in your kids. And the patterns can be broken, right? It's a habit. And habits can change. We know from the diet industry that, you can change your habits. So if you are perpetually showing up in the same way with your kids, then it's time to change the habit. And, it takes some practice. Yeah, it's absolutely for parents. It's really about what's in our control to change. And because once we show up as that highest version of ourselves for our kids, we're able to coach them through. We can't do it if we're joining the tantrum with them.
Well, one way to start is you could listen to the Dear Anger podcast. I had a lot of compassion for the mom who called in, and she was so feeling bad about herself that she kept losing it. But I know, especially in the pandemic, a lot of parents have been through that. So the podcast is wherever you get your podcast. But talk a little bit, just in our final moment together, Rini, you have, if you go to GoZen.com, there are resources for kids and teens, like more practical things, guides that can really help you help your kids.
Yeah, kids are extremely sophisticated, so they want to learn life skills. So we try to present it through animation, through game, through flashcards, through beautiful art. So you can come to GoZen.com. It's for kids of all ages and for humans of all ages, really.
GoZen.com. And we'll see both of you as well. And Ed, you can just Dear Anger podcast, wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, whatever.
Yes, and I want to see, I have a little company called makelightmedia.com, and we take kind of a humorous approach, a funny approach. I want to see your letter to your anger, Kara, and I want you to share it with us later.
Yeah, I know, I didn't do it yet, but that was a homework assignment. I'm supposed to write Dear Anger and ask why my anger is there and what it's trying to tell me, since now we know it's always telling you something.
That's right.
All right, I appreciate both
That's
of you.
right.
Thank you, and thanks for being on Kara's Cures. We'll look for the Dear Anger podcast. Comes out once a week.
Thank you, Kara.
Thanks.
Pleasure.